You're live on JoyNews desk with me, Daniel Daz. Now, the Minority Caucus in Parliament is addressing the press on the Chief Justice's invitation for the General Legal Counsel to investigate the alleged statement made by the MP for Bolgatanga East, Dominic Akuritinga Ayine. Let's bring that live briefing being addressed by the Minority Leader in Parliament, Haruna Idrisu.
To an invitation originating from the Office of the Judicial Secretary requesting the Disciplinary Committee of the General Legal Counsel to investigate alleged statements made by the Honorable Dominic Akuritinga Ayine, the NDC Member of Parliament for Bolgatanga East Constituency and Chairman of the Subsidiary Legislation Committee of Parliament and former Deputy General and Deputy Attorney General and Minister of Justice over some comments the Honorable Member is alleged to have made at a panel discussion hosted by a civil society group, the Center for Democratic Development, CDD, on the theme Presidential Election Petitions and their impact on Africa's democracy. We understand that the Chief Justice's petition is based, in our view, on hearsay. It states his attention has been drawn to statements allegedly made by Dr. Dominic Ayine during a panel discussion on presidential election petition and their impact on Africa's democracy. He submits a Joy FM report of the panel discussion. That's the very reason why I've described it as something based on hearsay. The Chairman of the General Legal Counsel, who is also the Chairman of the Judicial Council and Head of the Judicial Service, an organ of state, in our view, has already determined that the comments are totally unacceptable and wants the Disciplinary Committee of the General Legal Counsel to investigate it further. It is against this background that we in the minority find the invitation to be in utter bad faith and meant to be an attack on free speech on Parliament as an institution and also as an affront to democratic and academic freedom. This invitation must also be seen to be an attack on freedom of expression and is only deepening growing concern about the creeping culture of silence in our country, which is gradually lingering its ugly head on our democratic dispensation, and therefore a grave threat to the sustenance of democracy in our country. In our view, Dr. Ayine was speaking as Member of Parliament, Chairman of the Subsidiary Legislation Committee of Parliament, and not only as a lawyer. I emphasize, he's Member of Parliament, he's Member of Subsidiary Legislation Committee of Parliament, and Chair of the Subsidiary Legislation Committee of Parliament. He has a duty and responsibility as Member of Parliament and Chairman of the Subsidiary Legislation Committee of Parliament to speak to the public on matters of public interest, as he did at the forum on the presidential election petition and its impact on Africa's democracy. Why must the tangential fact that he is a professional lawyer deprive him of his right to free speech, I ask? First, as a citizen of Ghana, secondly, as Member of Parliament, and thirdly, as Chairman of the Subsidiary Legislation Committee of Parliament. Probably even if he made these comments on the floor of Parliament, he would have been covered by privilege. And therefore, it will also raise a question whether his privileges are not being disrespected if he was speaking in his capacity as Chairman of the Subsidiary Legislation Committee. The Chief Justice's position, in our view, is an infringement of Dr. Ayine's right to free speech on all scores and intended to render him ineffective as a representative of the constituency and as Chairman of the Subsidiary Legislation Committee of Parliament. It must be observed that this is the first time that any Chief Justice in Ghana's history is descending into a matter of discourse to prevent a Member of Parliament and a lawyer from freely expressing his right to free speech in a matter that is not pending in court, but arising out of a judgment of the Supreme Court. Could this be fighting a proxy electoral battle on someone's behalf, and I emphasize it, this is post-judgment commentary. And therefore, when the Supreme Court rules, are we not allowed to critique the judgment? Are we not allowed to discuss the judgment? Are we not allowed to analyze the judgment? And therefore, Dr. Ayine is a respected academic and legislator and was making one of those comments in our strongest view as his contribution to deepening democracy, the rule of law, and enhancing the frontiers of jurisprudence generally. Rather than an attack on the judiciary, we therefore consider the petition a disproportionate interference with his right to freedom of expression and therefore not necessary for our democracy. It is tried knowledge that practitioners are restrained from commenting or making any prejudicial statements relating to pending matters before the courts, but they are free to critique the judgments after their delivery. Indeed, there is record. Those of you who are very familiar with Professor Kluje, you may want to read some of his criticisms of Supreme Court judgment. It will interest you the kind of words he used. Those of you who are familiar with Dr. Pimpong Buta, former Director General of the Law School, it will interest you to read his critique of some of the judgment emanating from our court. They both expressed strong views. The judgment was now in the public domain for scrutiny. The case was therefore no more pending at the time of the panel discussions. The fact that Dr. Ayine appeared before the court for contempt and was cautioned is no bar for him to hold opinions and to express them after the presidential petition elections case was decided. We believe strongly that attacks on free speech and freedom of expression can create a crisis of confidence in our democracy. For us, the viability of our democracy hinges on freedom of speech. Indeed, freedom of expression is the building blocks of democracy. The Chief Justice finds the alleged disparaging comments totally unacceptable and would like the General Legal Counsel to investigate this matter further. Is it not the case that judgments of the Supreme Court are in the public arena, as I indicated, open to discussion, criticisms, analysis, and intercourse? And this probably was one of the objectives of the CDD's roundtable discussion. So even if you are charging Dr. Ayine for this, are you going to proscribe CDD and are you going to punish CDD for providing the platform in this? That can be worrying as to how our democracy is looked at by international partners and observers of democratic practice throughout the world. We note with satisfaction the CDD's credentials and their contribution to the evolution and development of multi-party constitutional democracy in Ghana. Indeed, their record is a proud one in terms of their contribution to democratic development of our country. Dr. Ayene's standing to make academic commentary or criticisms of a judgment delivered by the Supreme Court and by extension expressing an academic opinion on the independence of the judiciary. We therefore conceive Dr. Ayene's comments seeking to improve the administration of justice. He probably shared those views as his contribution as to how Ghana can further deepen its democratic practice, improve the functioning of its democratic institutions. We consider the actions of the Chief Justice a restriction of political speech or on debate on matters of public interest. The hostility emanating from the Chief Justice's office will only negate Dr. Ayene's right to free speech and undermine Ghana's standing as a beacon of democracy that respects the values and ethos of democratic practice. We are therefore calling on the Chief Justice to reconsider his requests for Dr. Ayine to appear before the Disciplinary Committee of the General Legal Counsel to investigate the alleged statements in the interest of peace, national unity and cohesion, and more importantly, to safeguard our democracy. I thank you very much. We are free the ranking member on communication may take a few questions from you, and
I wanted to
do it.
I wanted to briefly do some tweet in 2-3 minutes by Dr. Kabna Donko, and then we'll now open it up for.
That's fine.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sremo dear, ye penny kaye, our Honorable Haruna Idrisu, minority leader, ye maybe Bonitofa.
And that was the minority leader Haruna Idrisu saying that the petition or the invitation by the Chief Justice to the General Legal Counsel to investigate Dr. Dominic Ayine on the statements that he made on the CDD platform is an interference on the Member of Parliament's rights to expression. He said specifically that the fact that Dr. Ayine is a lawyer should not preclude him from making public commentary, which is part of his duty as a Member of Parliament and a public official. We wait to see what exactly the response of the Chief Justice will be, or if indeed there will be one. But Mr. Idrisu has made it clear that it is an attack on Parliament's freedom of speech. You're live on JoyNews desk with me, Daniel Daze. We'll have more on this story in later bulletins. Now, though, it's time for business with Darryl Kwao.